Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new international edition of the XPRIMM Time for Business show. I'm Daniela GHEİţU, Editorial Director for XPRIMM Publication, and I'm happy to host you again in our studios, this time in a new setting that I hope you will like for the future meetings that we will have. Our show has already visited a number of interesting markets. We were in Poland, in Romania, in Croatia, in Slovenia, also in Georgia. We have also met a couple of times on the occasion of launching new editorial premieres. I will tell you about later a little bit about the latest reports that we have released. And now we are finally getting to one of the most important destinations that we have met on our list, namely the Russian insurance market. First of all, before actually starting to talk about this market, I just want to remind you to subscribe to our XPRIMM YouTube channel. Also follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook so that you can stay tuned with all the novelties that we are preparing for the forthcoming weeks. At this point, it is my pleasure to introduce our guests of today. They are representing really relevant entities of the market and the top well-known professionals. And I will start with the ladies. Mrs. Ekaterina Tolstova, Deputy Director of S&P Global for Russian Federation. Mrs. Anastasia Litvinova, Director of the Analytical Group for the Insurance Sector, Fitch Ratings. After that, Alexey BREDIKHIN, Director of the Financial Institution Ratings Group, ACRA. Mr. Arseniy POYARKOV, President of the analytical agency BusinessDrom. And Mr. Vladislav CHEZGANOV, Head of the Development Department of Sberbank Insurance. I hope I have pronounced your names well. Thank you all for participating and welcome. And I will not consume any additional time because we have a lot of interesting things to discuss today. I would start by asking you about the general evolution of the Russian market during these unprecedented, challenging times that we are all living. It is clear that lives and businesses altogether are confronted with new and problems that we have never experienced before. And the economic crisis that this health crisis has generated already is appreciated by many as being more deeper and more important than the 2008 one. So what would you say about the Russian economic environment and, of course, the evolution of the Russian insurance market during these days? I would start with Alexey BREDIKHIN, as you are a national rating agency and analyst. I think you have the best position to comment on this. Please, Alexey.
Thank you, Daniela. As regard to the entire economy, according to ACRA's macroeconomic forecast, the decline in the Russian economy in 2020 will be about 4%. Last year, the economy grew by 1.3%. Therefore, we can estimate the impact of the pandemic in 2020 as 5 to 5.5% of Russia's GDP. The service sector and retail trade have suffered heavy losses. However, the most important sectors of Russian economy, mining, manufacturing and construction, were less affected. In general, we believe that the current crisis in terms of consequences can't be compared to those of 1998, 2009, or even 2015. The downturn in spring was the sharpest in history, right? But also it was relatively short. Potential long consequences are concentrated in individual industries, but not affected the entire economy, as it was the case for the previous crisis. As for insurance, we believe that the pandemic, the quarantine restriction, and the decline in business activity have had a negative impact on the growth. Last year, we focused it 10% increase of insurance premiums in 2020. Now we expect that they will remain at last year's level. Meanwhile, unlike foreign companies, Russian insurance have not suffered significant losses as a result of the pandemic. This is due to the low level of insurance coverage on the risks associated with pandemic and quarantine measures is imposed by authorities. Quarantine restrictions significantly reduced the total amount of losses for motor insurance and paradoxically for voluntary medical insurance. These types of insurance account for about 75% of total insurance payments in the non-life segment. These factors have supported growth trends in the return of assets and equity of insurance, which we observed over past few years. Return on assets and return on equity reached the highest values in the last 5 years. So we can conclude that the pandemic impacted the entire economy and the insurance sector, but not so bad as we could expect before. Daniela?
I would say that the figures as presented by the National Bank of Russia show the first half-year results more like a lack of growth than an actual decrease. Yet, as I have seen, the second quarter was the premiums were quite falling down, and the big question, I think, is what will come in the third in the quarter and by the end of the year. Ekaterina, how are things showing from the perspective of an international rating agency?
Yeah, thank you, Daniela. From our side, first I should say that we all face unprecedented times. We need to work remotely. It's both for people, for insurance companies, or for any other corporates. And if we start from the macroeconomic view, our sovereign analysts affirmed the rating of Russia back in July, and this was affirmed the investment grade, BBB- with a stable outlook. And the stable outlook reflects our expectations that strong fiscal and external balance sheets will support the economy, and Russia will be able to withstand the stress, which we currently incorporate in our forecasts. At the same time, if to put this into context of comparabilities, for example, other emerging economies like Turkey is rated at B+ with stable outlook. We see that, for example, South Africa is rated at BB level, and Mexico is at BBB with a negative outlook. So in this case, Russia isn't fairly looking too bad with BBB- stable outlook. At the same time, it's also worth noting that in October, for the first time since the outbreak of pandemic, we revised our forecast for the economic growth. And surprisingly for Russia and some other economies, we became more positive in terms of our views. We still expect contraction in 2020, but there will be some rebound in 2021. At the same time, if we speak around the insurance sector, to look prospectively and retrospectively on the insurance sector, we consider that to this crisis, insurance companies came in a better shape than previously. And what drives this? First, that insurance companies accumulated sufficient capital buffers through retained earnings and also quite modest dividend policy from the shareholders. At the same time, we see that underwriting performance of insurance companies didn't materially suffer during the last 10 years. And at the same time, insurance companies actually became less risk averse, and they started to focus more on risk selection. And this speaks not only for underwriting, but also on the investment side. And here we see that the average credit quality on invested assets improved significantly over the last 10 years. So all in all, I say that the current environment is still remains challenging and will remain challenging for a while, and most likely till vaccine will be broadly used. At the same time, we will closely monitor the situation, how it evolves, and definitely this will lead to some changes in our forecasts. But for now, we see really limited effect on insurance companies taking into account current macroeconomic conditions.
So if I understand well, you are quite optimistic, I would say, at least in what it concerns the insurance industry. And in fact, the crisis has found the market in a good shape, which it's very good now and helped the market to sustain the challenges better. But I would like to stop for a moment to the life insurance business, and I will ask Anastasia to help us a little bit. The years before, data were showing life insurance in Russia like a market driver. And I'm wondering if this status was maintained also during this period, because in other markets, we have seen insurance complaining about the low rate environment, about the decreasing purchasing power or saving power of the customers. So life insurance in the CE at least seems to be the most challenged business line. Is it the same in Russia, or is it a better situation, Anastasia?
Well, thank you, Daniela. It's a very interesting question, and perhaps a couple of words on what the life insurance sector in Russia looks like for that part of our audience who are not too much familiar with it. Russian life insurance sector is rather unique. It doesn't look like any other sector in the Eastern Europe. It is fully based on hybrid products, which are structured as single premium products with a term of, in average, 5 to 7 years, with low surrender values, with zero or very low guaranteed yield, and the actual yield linked to a wide range of derivatives which are offered to policyholders. So these hybrid products were the key source of growth for the life insurance sector between 2011 and 2018. The sector actually grew 31 saw a 31-fold growth between those years just for premiums, and in terms of reserves, the life insurance sector exceeded the reserves of the non-life insurance sector in Russia. But in 2019, for the first time after a long period of growth, the sector saw a decline in premiums. The premiums declined 10% in 2019 because the regulator found some mis-selling, as they called it, and they decided to tighten the conduct regulation because the hybrid products were sold as close substitutes for bank deposits, and they are almost fully sold through the bank insurance channel. And in many cases, the policyholders complained that they did not understand fully the difference between bank deposits and hybrid life products when they purchased life products, and it was not possible to exit those products because of the low surrender values. So the central bank tightened the regulations, and that was the reason for the sector to decline for the first time in 2019. And what we saw in 2020, so there was some growth in the first quarter relative to the first quarter 2019, and then because of the lockdown we saw minus 18% in the second quarter 2020 relative to the second quarter of the previous year. The figures for the third quarter have not been made public by the central bank yet. It's a bit slow relative to other regulators in the CIS region. But what we see from the figures published by leading players of the sector, we expect to see a significant increase in the sales of life hybrid products in the third quarter. Why so? We think that the key reason for this, and what we heard also from the market participants, is that FX denominated, mainly US dollar denominated life hybrid products became particularly popular amid declining yields offered by banks for US dollar denominated deposits. So people disregard all those disadvantages of life hybrid products, including low surrender values, including absence of the guarantee schemes, and sometimes unclear formula of the investment yield, because they wish to have, they expect to have higher return on US dollar denominated product than they expect to have from a bank deposit. So I think that for the full year, we will see some positive figures when we look at the growth of the life sector in Russia, because the effect of the regulatory tightening has probably already fully expired in 2019.
Okay, so then good news are expected to come in, I understand. That would be very good to hear. Let's go now a little bit on the non-life side, because in the end, it is the largest side of the market. And I would ask Vladislav to help us with some information. I know that your company is not involved in motor insurance, but however, as motor insurance accounts for about 1/3 of the non-life business, I think maybe you can share with us also some information on this side of the business from the market knowledge that you have. How was non-life insurance going in this period? And I would have an additional question. How different is the situation between different areas of Russia? Russia is an immense territory, and I know that, of course, besides Moscow and St. Petersburg, which are concentrating a very large part of the business, probably the situation is different across the territory in other parts. How can you comment?
Thank you, Daniela, very much for invitation to this talk show. And as everybody said, 2020 is considered to be one of the hardest to the world and to Russian economy. And insurance is one of the derivatives from the economy. But as history shows us, insurance is more stable business sector, and also for the reason in crisis, especially people still wanted to feel comfortable for their property, despite of economy slows down. But unlikely that Russian economy had minus in their focus, about 4%. We believe that Insurance market, non-life, will also show a minus. And on this slide, you can see our forecast for 2020. As you know, there is a big difference between month to month in this year, especially. Therefore, we had a special forecast for this year. Before 2020, we've got a forecast for the year. In this year, especially, we have a forecast for each quarter of the year. And as you can see on the slide, the first quarter was plus 20% for non-life market insurance, and there is a very good result. And there was a second quarter with a minus, but overall in 6 months, the non-life market showed plus 1%. And we can talk about the highest business lines in non-life insurance is motor insurance, as you suppose it is Casco, and compulsory motor third-party liability, or in Russia we said OSAGO. And this market is the highest, the biggest, and there is two main business lines. OSAGO, we suppose that in 2020 it is be the same result as 2019. In Casco, we suppose that it will be minus 5% due to ruble denomination. Devaluation, and there is a result in COVID-19. There was quarantine. There is restrictions for dealers, for people who wants to buy a new car right now. Sometimes they don't have an opportunity to buy a new car because there is no available in stock in Russia and in other countries. Therefore, their factories were closed to produce this amount of cars. And 2020 we see minus 3% overall for non-life insurance, and 2029 we suppose that it will be plus 3%, but still it will be the same as 2019. That's why we don't see any kind of positive results in non-life insurance. And I didn't said about voluntary health insurance, as we say in Russia, DMS. This is a second business line in terms of gross premium written. We see the stable volume for this market because there are two main factors, and the biggest one is medical influence. It is the same as the price in markets when you buy products and so on. Medical influence is when prices for medicals and for all other expenses in medical business is prices are growing, and on the other side is a number of contracts. It will be negative for this market, and overall the market will be the same as in 2019. But in the first quarter, in the second quarter, there was in the first quarter of 2012 there was a very high growth of VHI. The second 6 months of 2012, it was the same result, and as 6 months of 2019. And if you will ask me about 2020 2022-2023, we suppose that it will be plus 4% growth, because in this time we can see any kind of growing factors for non-life insurance market.
It's interesting because very few people are daring to make any forecast this time when the situation is changing from quarter to quarter.
If you will ask me this question in April we had an forecast minus 20%. That's why due to April to May, from May to June, from June to July, our forecast, the minus will be smaller and smaller. Right now, minus 3%, and you know, as you said, forecast is not the nicest job, but still we have to do this to see what is happening around us and about
the situation
insurance.
was the same in other countries too. Usually in the beginning of the lockdown, most analysts were seeing double-digit falls in gross written premiums, and they were quite pessimistic, considering at least that motor insurance is the main business line in our region, and the lockdown was stopping everything, was freezing completely transportation activities. But in the end, it seems that most markets have done better than expected, and we can mostly speak rather than about stagnation or loss of growth than of actual fall of the markets. But of course, with the second wave of these pandemics, there is to be seen what will come in the future. Is there anybody else? Do you have something else to add, or any of our guests?
Yes, you had a question about regions in Russia.
Yes.
It is synchronized with the restrictions within the region. In Moscow region, there were the biggest restrictions, and that's why the insurance market, in case of non-life insurance, were affected the most. In other regions, there was a different policy. It was dependent on the politics that were ruling this region. And in Moscow and the Moscow region, it was the hardest time from April to July.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Moscow region has also the largest slice in the market, so it was quite challenging, I would say. If there are some other things to add from our other guests, if you have something, if not, I would.
Daniela,
yes,
Daniela,
please.
sorry.
Please, Alexey.
I just want to share our forecast for the next year, and we are quite optimistic regarding medical insurance, because as we see, the pandemic in particular stimulus motivate people to think about their health, and also motivate companies to insure their staff, and so we are expecting growth in this sector for the next year. Also, we're expecting growth in accident insurance, because credit activity of Russian banks in retail is continuing to increase. So we can be quite optimistic about this sector as well. Thank you.
Oh, that means that maybe some lines are going down, but there are others emerging.
Yes,
we will see later on, because of course the changing work style and everything in our lives will will provide for other risks to be becoming more popular in insurance terms, let's say. I would ask you for just 1 minute of patience, because I would like to remind you and to our viewers that we have recently launched 2 new reports, which usually are quite well expected by insurance professionals. This is one of them is the XPRIMM Insurance Report, containing data for the first half of 2020, and referring to about 30 markets in the CE, CIS, Southeastern Europe. And the other one is the Motor Insurance Report, which focuses, of course, on motor insurance and provides for statistical data for 2019 and the first half of this year. Both of them are very easily available on xprimm.com website. It is just enough to type on your keyboard xprimm.com, and the first thing that you will see on the homepage of the website are these 2 reports and the keys to download them. This being said, I would like to invite you to move our discussions a little bit to the future, because, okay, we have seen the crisis, we know what happened. Probably that all insurers have already learned some lessons from that. But I would like to stop with you and to discuss a little bit about one of the trends that emerged during this period and was in fact the most visible one all over in the insurance industry at global level, I can say, namely digitalization. How was the Russian market dealing with this trend? Was it prepared to advance very fast in this direction? Were insurers ready to get in touch and stay in touch with their customers online as much as possible? We're also dealing with some increased cyber risks, let's say, or other challenges. I would like to first invite Arseniy to talk about this. I know digitalization is one of your topics of preference. So
thank you, Daniela. Thank you very much. Now, before we talk about insurance, we need to say a few words about banks. In Russia, the digitalization of banking services had begun quite a long time ago and developed very well, even better than in some banks in Europe. I hope everyone can have some experience with Russian banks because it's really good. Banks literally trained the client to receive all services in one click. And the insurance system was less prepared for challenges of the pandemic. The largest insurance companies, as it often happens, didn't focus on development of its online services because before they had won the competition through the weight in the market, agency sales channels, and primarily it was banking channels. Therefore, in large insurance companies, everything is still quite old-fashioned. Issuing of policies on paper, the office, some integration with partners as a sales channels. So direct digital sales were quite fully developed. But when the pandemic had come, some insurance companies somehow had to change their business process because it was forbidden to go to the offices. And
Yes,
at the first hand, the change affected the back office. They were first to feel all the pain of working remotely, and the quality of work has improved. Various client relationship management systems were implemented and improved, and it was a very interesting experience to all insurance companies, actually. And for the client, if we're talking about the client, these changes were not so visible, but still they were. For example, before the pandemic, a huge share of online sales was in travel insurance. It was a huge percent that was sold online. It was very little share of the market, but a huge percent of online share. And so it was compulsory motor third-party liability. Also, share of online sales was growing quite fast. But if we are talking about motor hull, it was really very small. And it was really very small, but due to the situation, it began to grow. And finally, we saw more and more companies started some online insurance projects. Even there were some insurance companies specializing on online. For example, we have Muffin Insurance Motor Hull Online. It's online. Let's say it's company. It's not exactly the company because it has license of Absolute Insurance. It's another company, but it's like an insurance company. We have Monday Insurance. It's the property of individuals online, and this segment started to grow. Even me, by myself, I bought online insurance the first time. So I am doing all this process with the digitalization quite long time ago, but I had my user experience with some insurance agents, and it wasn't comfortable for me to go to another company. But when my insurance period finished, and I understood that I can't go to any kind of office, and I don't want to see even the courier, I tried one of online companies, and I bought Motor Hull online. It was quite interesting. So, but still, this segment is very, very small in Russia. The rapid development of digitalization is super stressed on legislation, and the Russian insurance market is quite regulated, as you know. And so it's quite hard for companies to give digital service, truly digital service. Bank of Russia and tax authorities are moving towards to digitalization, but it's quite a long and hard way. So, as I said, in general, we still have really small share of true online insurance, but I hope it will grow. Daniela.
I will ask you an additional question, or even two questions. First of all, on the sales side, I think pretty much the situation is similar with other countries. Online, pure online sale, it's still a very small share. But digitalization was very visible on the claims side, with aiming to improve the customer's journey and to ease the entire process. This would be, I would ask you if the same goes also for Russian insurers.
Yes. Okay. You have a second question.
Okay, I will come back with the second one.
Okay. Okay. Yes, sure. We have some new online experience of claim settlement, but there are two main problems. First problem is fraud. So it's a market problem, and it can be solved quite easily. And the second problem is tax authorities, because it makes some additional risks to insurance companies. But they work with it, and let's say you can't have the payment for your loss online, but you can have repayment. So now you have some solutions so that you buy the insurance policy online. If something happens, you make some photo, video. The guy from insurance company comes to you. He takes your car, and then he brings it back repaired. So it's quite online. This is 100% online service.
This should be really good for customers. My second question was, what is still needed to really allow a fully digitalized sales or claims process? For instance, I saw in other countries, including in Romania here, the digital signature is not accepted on every kind of document. There are still processes where you have to need paper printed document. Is the same, what is really needed to help digitalization advance at a faster pace, let's say?
Well, actually, I think we just need some time because everything is going in right direction, and it's the question of some time and development of ecosystems. Because these problems with signatures, with fraud, are mostly happen because insurance company don't have online contact with its clients. And insurance company hardly know this client, and there is no trust from both sides, actually. But when the client is inside the ecosystem, it solves the trust problem, because ecosystems knows about this client everything, and it's much less fraud. There are no problems with signatures because you sign payments in your bank client on your mobile phone. So I think it's some matter of several years that online settlement and online payments even will come.
Okay, thank you very much, Arseniy. I understand that as everywhere, in the end, the digitalization of the insurance industry is growing at the same pace, or probably a little bit in advance than the society as a whole digitalization is possible. I would like to invite you, Liz, to come back a little bit to the direct business issues, and what Alexey was saying before, that he sees a real chance for medical insurance to grow and other lines, is in fact what I was about to ask you, because adapting to this new normal, as everybody is calling it, means for many a complete new lifestyle and new business style. And this is bringing challenges, but I also think is bringing some opportunities. And my question was, what opportunities are you seeing? Because the challenges we have already seen until now. Ekaterina, do you have something on this opportunity line?
Yes, since on my side I need to be more positive, starting from the beginning of this, because I think we always can convert some risks into opportunities for the market, and we see definitely this here. And I think I would echo here one of the opportunities associated with digitalization, because we consider that innovative companies can benefit in the current environment, and despite we are saying that digital products are not so well sold on the market, I think the situation of the first 6 months shows that even during lockdowns, the insurance companies managed to sell their products. So taking this into account, we consider that digitalization will go further and will be one of the opportunities of the insurance sector. Speaking further, I think it's not only around the insurance products which we are talking about, but also around client service, because what we were seeing previously, that companies were just providing insurance as a coverage, but now companies are trying to focus on the client service and client service excellence. And this was a general trend which we were seeing worldwide, especially in the developed economies. And now I think this is the right time for the insurance companies in Russia as well to focus on this. And this could bring also a further and better experience for the insurance sector. At the same time, we all recall the situation that happened earlier this year, and we all speak around COVID and the situation, how it impacts. But insurers are living and coping with other different stories like natural catastrophes and other things. There was an oil spill in Arctic earlier this year, and we understand that it has some significant ecological damage to the Arctic. And taking this into account, we understand that insurance companies are well aware of a number of risks, and they can be a good facilitator in terms of protecting and preventing this kind of risks, and good collaboration in this kind of environment could help. And finally, if we speak in terms of the growth prospects from the perspective of S&P Global Ratings, so we see that there are still muted growth prospects in the current environment. Definitely some lines of business can boost and compensate decline from other lines of businesses. But generally, taking into account the current trends, I would say that there is more specifics in terms of quality, digitalization, and new types of products that insurance companies can provide in collaboration with governments, society, and corporates. So I will stop here, but I can continue.
I'm sure you can continue. In fact, you're very right. We are talking very much about the pandemics and COVID and so on and so forth, but there are other risks that are not ceasing to exist because of the pandemics. And I think that could be really challenging the situation when of risk accumulations, for instance, of some strong weather events that are adding up to the lockdown problems and so on and so forth. I saw, Alexey, you said before you have talked about medical insurance. Would it be another line that you see
Sure.
popping up?
Okay, but first of all, I would like to note that the whole market has a significant growth potential. In 2020, we conducted a study of international statistics, and this study showed that there is a relationship between the penetration of insurance in the non-life segment and the size of GDP per capita. In 2019, the penetration level of non-life insurance in Russia was approximately 1%. Based on the results of our model, the potential level of insurance market penetration in Russia in the current economic situation is 1.7%. Therefore, the volume of insurance premiums in the non-life segment in Russia should be approximately 1.7 times higher. We don't have yet a similar study in the life segment, but we can assume that its growth potential is even higher. If we're talking about types of insurance, as I said, we believe that the pandemic will strengthen the position of the VMI segment as a growth point for anti-insurance. Last year, we noted an acceleration in the growth of this segment. In our opinion, it was associated with increased public interest in staying healthy, as well as with the development of medical and information technologies. We believe that the pandemic will give additional stimulus to these trends. We also believe that individual property and life insurance have significant development potential. On technology side, the development, at least in the coming years, we agree with colleagues, will be associated with the internet and digitalization. Namely, remotely underwriting policies and loss settlements seem to be relevant issues. In addition, the use of machine learning methods is very promising, especially in terms of pricing. Finally, from a marketing point of view, insurance will focus on making insurance as a part of a lifestyle for their consumers. In this regard, companies integrated into ecosystems, successfully developing ecosystems, will have an advantageous positions. In short, this is our view, our strategical view to opportunities on our market. Thank you.
Thank you also, Alexey. Well, what do you say, Vladislav, on what would Sberbank bet for the future? Is there any line in your portfolio that has a really interesting potential of development?
As you said in the starting of this talk show, we did not start many business lines. We are starting to go for motor insurance. We had one project in a group of Sber. It is a CMTPL marketplace where you can buy an insurance from most of major insurers. And I would say that there is a problem, like ambition to do new channels, and online it is this year is all about new channels. If you want to be a sufficient insurer, you need to be online. You need to provide total distance services in case of sales, in case of sale support, claims settlement. You need to how to say, mix channels. It means that if your clients visited your site, you need to provide closing the contract with the client in another channel, like in agent or direct insurance. And we need to say that there is a time for new payments, like new policy periods. Most of clients don't want to buy annual insurance like one time in a year. They want to pay per month, and that's why we will develop subscriptions products. Like you can buy a product for a week, for a month, for a quarter, or even annual, as usual.
Thank you. So I would say that it's not so much probably about the business line, but the business style. No. Yes. Well, I would come back to the global view of a rating agency, and I would like to ask Anastasia, what about the market status in the light of the second wave of pandemic and its impact? Because we have seen, okay, first time it was in the end a rather good situation, given that the market was strong with reserves and everything in place, providing for a good shape. If the situation would, in the economy in general, would worsen significantly now, what do you expect for the insurance industry?
I will probably not be able to give a very broad global view, but I will try to give some highlights on the sectors which I follow and which I know in fuller detail than a global overview. We have just finalized a study of the impact of the lockdowns on the Kazakh insurance sector, for which many statistics is made available publicly by the local regulator shortly after the end of the reporting periods. And we found some very interesting things, which some of which I think are common for many sectors. So the most stringent requirements related to the pandemic lockdowns were introduced in mid-May and were removed at the end of so in mid-March and were lifted in mid-May. And what we saw a 40% decline in MTPL premiums in April. So, and we found that 1/3 of premiums are written in two largest cities of Kazakhstan, which are Nur-Sultan and Almaty. And we think that this brings us to the conclusion that the citizens of the largest cities, they skipped the due renewals of the MTPL policies. Another interesting thing that we found that in the third quarter, there was a catch-up growth in the MTPL, which has almost fully replenished the decline observed in the second quarter. An interesting thing that we expect the Kazakh motor insurers to report probably better results in 2020 than in 2019, because they had much reduced claims frequency in the second quarter, and they made a release of their claims reserves almost immediately based on the regulatory reserving methodology. And many of them have also recorded significant FX gains, since it's a usual thing for them to keep a surplus of FX denominated assets over FX denominated liabilities, and the FX gains were recorded in the context of significant Kazakh tenge depreciation against the US dollar. But that's not the full summary of the conclusions that we made from this study. We also found that while some lines were quite resilient in terms of premiums during the stringent lockdown in the second quarter, we saw a widening decline, widening recession in the third quarter, which brings us to the conclusion that there might be a series of aftershocks after the lockdowns, and they are more related to the recession, when commercial policyholders might review their cost policies, and they might apply some cost cutting. And this is particularly true for small and medium-sized companies. Certainly, many sectors which relate to cross-border, all sorts of cross-border operations, have experienced a deep decline. Travel insurance, aviation insurance, also some sorts of motor insurance, including green card. And probably the most interesting conclusion is that some of the larger players in the Kazakh insurance sector, which think they have buffers, including capital buffers, to withstand a longer recession than smaller and medium-sized players, they decided that this is the best time to squeeze small players out of the sector through the pricing competition and commission competition. So as a result of the third quarter, the specialized Kazakh motor insurers lost quite significant part of their segment share in the MTPL. So to summarize, what can be a forecast for the next wave of the pandemic lockdown? We think that all costs which are related to commercial lines of business which could be cut would be cut. certainly there will be some growth in the health insurance, which is related to the online medical consultations. That's true. But on the other side, we see that the health insurance was not too much helpful during the lockdown. So people just couldn't use it because the medical facilities were closed for patients. We also think that the recession itself will bring a decline to the insurance premiums written in all kinds of service sectors. And we think that commercial policyholders which feel well will still start some price negotiations for the next renewal. While 2020 will not be a negative year from the point of view of capital impact or underwriting profitability for most insurers, at least in Kazakhstan, which we observed, we think that 2021 could be probably more difficult because of the delayed impact of those aftershocks about which we talked. So about cost cutting in the commercial lines of insurance, which bring the highest profits. That's a very brief summary, I think.
Yes, thank you very much. As far as I understand, it is all about more prudent, let's say, spending behavior of customers, being them private persons or corporate. And also probably a certain sense of tiredness about this long period and a little bit less optimistic attitude, let's say, from everybody, which could mean lower appetite for buying insurance. But this is all bringing us to our final topic, namely His Majesty the customer, which is in fact in the center of insurers' activity. And what I would like to ask you is if you have seen somehow changing behavior, changing expectations, probably a change of general attitude, preference for more quality instead of lower prices, all these sorts of things. Arseniy, have you, because many of these trends are very much related with the digital customers and their experiences with other types of services. This is why I'm starting with you.
Thank you, Daniela. And when we are talking about digitalization, first of all, we imagine buying a service through the company's application or through the company's website. But now we see that the emphasis is shifted from the development of this application to tapping into other companies' ecosystems, because it's much more easier for customers. And this is easier for the company also to reach the clients, not through the kind of internet darkness, but from the system where client already is. And banks have extensive experience in selling service through applications, their own applications, which the customer use every day through the mobile phone, for example. For insurance companies, one way to manage, so it's also easier to integrate into a ready-made ecosystem. They don't need to spend money on development and advertisement for the new online product, and the client don't have to pay for this development also. And of course, this is a huge risk for company also. It's a huge risk to lose direct contact with the client and to lose the client after all. But not every company can work with the client directly in this new online reality, as we say. So not every company has enough resources to reach company and to stay with this application number one for the client. And for the client, everything is very simple. he gets the product in the place. It's easier for him. Less clicks, more clients. Let's say like that. So, and for example, what can we do? What can companies and clients do with this? So, for example, in Russia, the Bank of Russia creates a financial service marketplace to help to solve this problem. And as my colleague already said, in this marketplace, there will be some huge number of financial products and insurance products, and the client will be able to choose. And we don't know yet how it will work in practice. We don't know, will it be comfortable, will it be comparable, because it's not the thing to put many products on the shelf. The thing is to make it easy and comparable and comfortable for the client. But anyway, Bank of Russia tries this way of development of the market, and I think this is good. So as for the geographical features of our huge country, also banks trained customers that everything can be done online. And insurance companies also, as we already said, focus on this online also. And so let's make things easy. Every client who buys insurance for his own money, and quite few people won't buy insurance, as you know. Everyone wants insurance when something bad happens, but very few people want to buy insurance when he has choice actually. So every client will count steps in mobile phone or web browser, how many steps, how many clicks, let's say, he needs to buy the product. So who wins this race? Wins the customer. For customer, I think last year, next year, that will be the same. So it's price and speed, and it will develop online now.
Well, thank you very much. I think that in this tough environment, as far as the business environment is more challenging, probably the forceful position of power of the clients will increase, because in the end they have many options and many choices at this point, and probably the competition between insurance should go far beyond price in the area of quality of services. And please.
Oh yeah, one more word.
Yes, please.
So for one hand, that's true. The service is important. On the other hand, the huge part in the price of the insurance will be for the traffic. And who owns the traffic? He can speak with the insurance company about the service, the price, everything. And it's a very important part of development of the market.
Well, things are changing, obviously. Unfortunately, one thing is not changing. Time passes very fast, and we are already at the end of our show. I would ask you, each of you, to have an ending closure, let's say, for this discussion that, from my part, could continue for hours from now on. What would you send as a message for our viewers concerning your market and its current and future status, like a conclusion of words? Let's start. I will start in the order I'm seeing you. Alexey?
Thank you, Daniela. First of all, I would like to thank all the colleagues here for fruitful discussion. And to be short, main idea is that obviously the pandemic has demonstrated the need to improve insurance coverage around the world, including in developed markets. In this regard, we can believe that in the long term, the pandemic will contribute to the development of insurance, both in Russia and around the world. Taking into account the significant growth potential and high profitability, which I have already mentioned, we can be quite optimistic about the prospects for the Russian insurance market.
Oh,
Thank
this
you.
is so good to hear. Anastasia, optimistic too?
I'm always optimistic about the companies which maintain a prudent reserving and pricing discipline. I think they will survive throughout any cycle. And probably the key message is that insurers need to be quite flexible in managing their administrative expenses at this tough period of our development. I think expenses is probably on the top of the agenda.
The same, Ekaterina? Positive, optimistic, not optimistic?
I think we are more on a positive note for the Russian insurance sector, because even if to look at the ratings that we have as an S&P in Russia, then we still maintain two positive outlooks for insurance companies, and also we upgraded one insurance company this year. So in this respect, we can say that we do not maintain any negative outlooks, and most of the ratings are unstable currently. So generally, if we speak overall, I think that definitely companies can experience an uneven impact from the COVID, but the most for us is the ability to withstand the current condition depend on a company's business mix, capital position, investment portfolio allocation, and the ability to adapt to the challenging environment. This is both from the operational side and the business perspective. And I think we still have time to closely monitor how the situation will evolve going forward, and also to adapt and change our forecasts respectively in this environment.
Thank you. We will go now to Vladislav. Optimistic or not? We have 3 votes for an optimistic approach up to this moment.
I'm trying to be always optimistic. I have 3 phrases for our viewers: stay home, stay healthy, and use online.
That's good. And our final guest on the list, Arseniy.
Oh, Daniela, as for me, I'm not very optimistic about insurance companies, because their costs will grow. If we're talking about mass insurance, traffic will cost more and more. And if we're talking about this segment, it will be quite hard. In few years, it will be damn hard for the companies that don't have their own ecosystem, banks, or other huge traffic. But I'm very optimistic for insurance users, because they will have more and more data-driven insurance coverage, and they will be able to choose when, what, and how they will insure in many ways. Even such ways we can hardly even imagine without, so partly automated. And I'm very optimistic about this. This will make insurance in exactly way it needs to be.
Oh, thank you. This is a good and very positive conclusion. In fact, I think it's important to remain positive throughout all these challenges. And given that we are speaking about a strong market, a very large one, a very diversified one, there are good chances for it to overcome any challenge in good shape. This being said, it is my pleasure to already let you know that in January we will have a second meeting with the Russian market. What to say, it's a very big market. There are many things worth talking about. Until then, thank you for the presence today, to our speakers as well to our viewers. Thank you also to our show's sponsor, Euroins, part of the Eurohold group, rapidly extending financial group with a larger and larger footprint in the Eastern Europe. And once again, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel of XPRIMM. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. You will find out about our future plans, starting with a very interesting conference that will be held next week for Georgian market. Very interesting speakers, a rich agenda, a new format. We are warmly inviting you to attend it and to watch us again every week with other novelties. Stay with us and goodbye.
Goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was really very good.